You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hey Evan, it's Dr. J. It's a great Friday here over in Austin. How's it up in Louisville?
Howdy. Blue skies and the grass is green. We've had about 3 feet of rain, it feels like, over the past week, so everything is super lush.
That's great. Another great Friday. Well, we talked pre-show. We wanted to discuss a little bit more about hair loss and different things that we can do to help improve hair quality and potentially even grow back hair as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so I've had quite a few women. I mean, and it's always there. Hair loss is always a symptom, but I've found this week especially that alopecia has been popping up, and it almost makes you think it's more common when you're hearing it multiple times a week. It's like, whoa, does everybody have alopecia? And so we know one of our online friends, Yuri, he has alopecia and has talked about it. I believe he's talked about it at least, where he's lost his eyebrows, he's lost everything. And obviously that's an extreme case to lose everything. But there's definitely some, I guess, a spectrum of hair loss that can happen. So maybe it's not a full state like the alopecia, but there's also like some thyroid dysfunction and some other stuff I suppose we can chat about that is going to be tied into mild hair loss.
Got it. Yeah, I actually had a conversation with Yuri Alkim about his hair loss, and he mentioned a lot of it had to do with poor diet when he was younger, as well as gut health issues. And if you look at alopecia or alopecia areata, as it's known in conventional medical world, it's kind of fun to say, areata. That's autoimmune, and we know with autoimmune stuff, there's almost always a gut element connected, right? Because we know leaky gut is when those tight junctions, the epithelial tight junctions open up, undigested, whether it's bacteria, lipopolysaccharide particles, or undigested food antigens, which are foreign food proteins, get into places in the bloodstream where the immune system isn't used to it, and that can really drive immune attack or an autoimmune attack. And alopecia is nothing more than a disease that describes where the immune system is attacking, specifically the hair follicles.
Interesting. So we would have to assume that any person who has this hair loss issue has some sort of gut issue. Is that a safe statement to say?
I would say anyone that has hair loss, and I hate absolutes, but I would say there's a very strong chance that if you have hair loss, outside of it just strictly being a genetic factor, there's more than likely a gut issue. And when we look at gut issues, it could be a gut issue where there's a full-on infection, like a parasitic or fungal overgrowth, or a bacterial infection. It could be just something like a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or it could even be just something like hydrochloric acid and amino acid or proteolytic enzyme deficiencies where you can't break down those amino acids, where you can't ionize those minerals. Now, typically, any type of deficiency in the gut where there's lower enzyme levels and lower hydrochloric acid, after a period of time, there'll typically be an infection present because we need the hydrochloric acid to sterilize the gut environment, especially the stomach. That sterile environment is akin to you going to a dirty picnic table and maybe spraying some bleach or some kind of sterilizer on the table. It keeps that area clean. Well, that's what happens in your gut. And hydrochloric acid is also important for cleaning the environment, but also activating enzymes. So if we aren't activating enzymes and we aren't keeping that environment clean, overgrowth can happen. And if food doesn't get broken down, the food rots and ferments, and then typically bacteria will then feed on the remains, if you will.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I actually have several people, like I mentioned, over the last week with alopecia, and one woman, I think she ended up not proceeding with her lab test. I'm not sure what ended up happening, but I really wanted to take a look at the gut. So at this point, I don't know what's going on with her gut if we're not going to proceed with testing, but I think it sounds like that's an important place to start. And then maybe you could shed some light on the thyroid issue, because anytime you talk about hair loss, women think that it's automatically the thyroid. Is that a place that you're going to look for issues as well?
Yeah, so one of the common symptoms of thyroid or of hair issues can be low thyroid. A lot of women will see it with the outer third of their eyebrows will start to thin out. We need thyroid hormone for adequate hair growth. So one of the things we see with lower thyroid hormone can be a really powerful growth factor for that hair follicle to produce hair. So if we have lower thyroid function, and it could easily be from an anemia, because a big building block for thyroid hormone is iron. That's part of the whole iodination process, involves iron. So if you're a female that's vegetarian or has a gut issue, low stomach acid, which typically also means low enzymes and malabsorption, and or you're a vegan vegetarian, you're really set up for a world of hurt, having a higher risk factor for thyroid issues, because we need that iron to make healthy thyroid hormone. And I did a blog over this a couple of years ago over at fixyourthyroid.com. You can take a look at it, where we talked about thyroid function and hair loss. And that's an age-old telltale symptom for low thyroid function. So we always want to look at thyroid issues when we see hair loss, and we always want to look at anemia, especially for women when they're either vegetarian, they have gut issues and malabsorption problems, and or they're menstruating excessively. They have a lot of PMS and they're bleeding. They're going through more than 4 or so tampons, or they're having just a prolonged bleeding period, and they're losing a lot of their iron that way.
Interesting. So there's a few things here. So it could be some iron anemia going on. So we would want to look at ferritin levels. And then you and I were also chatting off air earlier about iron saturation, correct? Would that be the two most important blood tests to look for?
Yeah, so ferritin and iron saturation are going to be important to look at. We like iron saturation 25 or above. We like ferritin, at least for a female, 30 or above. Now, we can go above and beyond that. We can also look at your iron-binding proteins like TIBC and UIBC. These are inverse proteins, so they go high when iron goes low. So think about it as like little fingers, right? The more you need the iron, the more fingers are going to be out there to try to grab and pull that iron into where it needs to go. So binding proteins go up when iron goes low. So it's kind of an inverse thing. It's kind of like TSH, right? TSH screams louder to the thyroid when the thyroid goes lower. You're trying to get someone's attention, right? You're talking to them across the room. They're not responding to your voice, so you raise the volume. Same thing. You're raising the volume and trying to pull that iron and get it into your body so you can carry oxygen and make thyroid hormone.
All right. So you were talking about thyroid. So when TSH is high, that's when we know that thyroid function is going to be low. So if we're kind of mixing lab tests here, we're kind of talking about a few different things that we're going to be looking for this whole hair loss picture. The thyroid's a good place to look. The iron levels are another good place to look. And then what about the adrenals? Because typically we're going to see some adrenal issues happening that could be tied into thyroid issues, correct?
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, stress hormone will do a lot of different things to our body, right? So stress hormone will typically catabolize tissue and amino acids, right? So we'll catabolize amino acids that could be used to make muscle or neurotransmitters, and amino acids can also go and make hair. So it's very possible the more you are in a stressed out state, the more the adrenals are hyper responding or being whipped like a tired horse, you could potentially catabolize those building blocks that could go and make quality hair. That's why many people have had experiences of extreme stress in their lives, like, really punctuated stress, like someone dies or, something really catastrophic happens and they start losing hair. So it's very possible that extreme stress and higher secretions of cortisol can really drive that hair loss. And also we know we need cortisol, healthy levels of it for thyroid conversion. So if we're not activating our thyroid hormone because now our cortisol is in the dump, we can also have it because of chronic cortisol imbalances that are driving low thyroid activation or low thyroid conversion.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So now the first place that people like to jump is supplementation. There's who knows how many millions of products out there that are designed or marketed for women, especially for hair, skin, and nails. Is that something that we would want to do right out of the gate? Or obviously it sounds like the better alternative is we need to kind of look for these other deeper underlying causes first, and then maybe the supplements are going to be kind of phase 2 or phase 3 in terms of treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the diet stuff's really important. We kind of echo this stuff. Supplements are meant to supplement a good diet and lifestyle. So we're making sure we have an anti-inflammatory diet because inflammation will drive cortisol because cortisol is our body's natural anti-inflammatory. So cutting out the grains and a lot of the food allergens. Plus we know that alopecia areata is going to be autoimmune. And we know gluten, how important gluten is at being an autoimmune part of the autoimmune mechanism, being an autoimmune stimulator. We know it can open up those tight junctions. We know it can drive inflammation. It also can be very high in sugar, right? A lot of the carbs, gluten, and a lot of refined sugar can drive your insulin levels up. And high blood sugar can also feed fungus. And a lot of people will have like cradle cap or AKA dandruff, or they'll say, call it seborrheic dermatitis. A lot of times this is driven by fungus. And I've had a handful of patients just this week that have come in with dandruff and with like psoriasis and things like that. And a lot of the seborrheic dermatitis and dandruff stuff is fungal in origin. Like a lot of the Nizoral or these antifungal head and shoulder shampoos, they're all trying to reduce fungus. And we can do that by stopping to feed the fungus in our diet and the sugar and stop driving the leaky gut, which could drive the autoimmune element with the alopecia areata.
Absolutely. So now are you going to see, I guess if they're new patients, then you probably don't have the results yet, but are you expecting to see some elevations of some markers on an organics to see maybe that there's some fungus or maybe even some yeast and fungus together that's causing these issues too?
Absolutely. And if we see imbalance in gut bacteria, whether it's SIBO or whether it's just a kind of run-of-the-mill dysbiosis, whether it's a fungal overgrowth, an H. pylori infection, or parasite infection, we want to make sure all of those things are eradicated. And then at the same time, make sure we have enough good, clean amino acids and protein in the diet, and we're actually able to digest it. So we want to make sure we're at least adding the secretions like the hydrochloric acid enzymes, bile salts, so we can break down these really good fats and proteins so we have the building blocks going right into our system.
Absolutely. Man, the thing that's beautiful about this model that we use is it doesn't really matter what the condition or what the symptom is. This net is both broad spectrum and specific in terms of the labs that we usually discuss and run to find things. So if it's gut symptoms, if it's hair loss, in this case, it may seem like just a general blanket approach, but really it's general and specific at the same time to try to identify the underlying causes of what's going on. And really there's only so many ways, it seems like, that things can dysfunction or function properly.
100%. Yep. Absolutely. So when you have a systems-based approach, we are just going in and we are assessing the body system. So we go and we look at the foundational system, which is going to be diet and lifestyle. Blood sugar, check. Do we have our macronutrients dialed down? Check. Too much carbs, too much protein. Are we breaking our food down? Check. Sleep, stress, all those things. And once we have those all checked off, then we can go into body system 1 where we look at the hormones in particular. adrenals, thyroid, female or male hormones, ATM or ATF, and then we can go to the next system, which is the gut, and that's where it gets interesting because we can go through the 5 R's there, which are removing the bad foods, replacing enzymes and acids, repairing the gut lining, removing infections, reinoculation with good bacteria. So we go through a lot of that there, and then we can also look through other deeper infections too, and then we can go down into detox and other nutrient deficiencies on body system 3. So we really have this really great big net so we can catch as many potential intruders or imbalances before they become a major problem.
Definitely. And that's the goal about this whole functional medicine approach that we're using, which some people say, like you said, some people say they're doing functional medicine, but it's different or it's not quite this type of approach. This method is simple enough, but it's effective enough too. So people, when they're looking on the internet, say for hair loss supplements, you could probably get locked into some multi-level marketing scheme product or something similar where it's really just a lot of hype and marketing, but it doesn't really have any solid foundation and science behind it. And so people get frustrated and they go and they drop their money into these products and they don't really move the needle. So maybe we can talk about some of the ethical or the intelligent ways that you could supplement if you really were trying to support, optimal hair, skin, nails, hair growth, etc.
Absolutely. So off the bat, I skipped one thing. We also know that blood sugar swings and adrenal stress will encourage more reverse T3, which are like the metabolic blanks in our gun cartridge, so to speak, in our magazine. Because when you pull a trigger on the gun, right, a bullet comes out, right, you actually have an effect. Well, metabolically, reverse T3 is supposed to bind to the receptor sites, right, where T3 would go. But the problem, reverse T3 is like putting a blank in that gun. So you get the sound, but you don't get the effect, right? You get the hormone in the receptor site, but you don't get the increase in metabolic activity that typical T3 thyroid hormone will produce. So that can cause less thyroid hormone via the reverse T3 mechanism. And we know that blood sugar issues will drive that too. We know overall stress will drive that as well. So that's one other mechanism I wanted to add.
That's great. Now, so you're saying here that if we are looking at a blood panel that reverse T3, if that's elevated, and maybe you can shout out some of the more appropriate ranges, that is going to be an issue.
Yeah, typically we like it below 24 or 23. Typically in the mid-teens is okay. We actually would look at like a reverse T3 to free T3 ratio or a total T3 to T3 ratio. I'm pretty sure my free T3 to reverse T3 ratio is around 10 to 14 is optimal. I'll pull up my my little reference range here right now, and I'll confirm that while we're live. But that's the general gist. Yeah, total T3 to reverse T3 ratio is 10 to 14. Free T3 to reverse T3 ratio is 20 to 30. So that's the ideal range there. And you can just Google those ratios online. There's a couple of good sites that will provide an actual kind of algorithm where you can plug in the T3, plug in the reverse T3, set their standard deviation, whether it's nanograms per DL or micrograms per DL, and it'll give you that number. So total T3 to reverse T3 is 10 to 14, and then free T3 to reverse T3 is 20 to 30. And we like to have that reverse T3 ideally in the very low 20s or mid-teens or so.
How high have you seen that number?
I've seen it, up into the 30s very easily. And that can easily happen with stress, emotional stress, blood sugar stress, and or just overall inflammation in the body, because that creates internal stress as well. So the reverse T3 is important because it's going to take that T3 that would be active and make it go downstream. And then it not only makes less T3, but then it prevents the T3 that's actually floating around in your bloodstream from binding into the receptor site and doing what it was designed to do in the first place.
Makes sense. That's a big issue there. And a lot of people are like, I'm not stressed. It's the invisible stressors too that we're factoring in, and we can see that. So you don't have to actually identify as a person that is stressed. It could be invisible stress that we're going to see on these lab results here.
Absolutely. And also estrogen dominance can provide problems too, because that will increase thyroglobulin, and thyroglobulin will decrease the amount of free T3 in your bloodstream. So it's kind of like reverse T3. The difference is reverse T3 is more or less blocking the receptor sites, where thyroglobulin is decreasing the amount of free fraction. So 2% of your thyroid hormone is actually free. The other 98% is protein bound. And what it's doing is the thyroglobulin is decreasing the percent of free T3. So instead of having 2%, maybe now you have 1.9 or 1.8. We're just having less free fraction available. So when we look at our total numbers, like maybe our total T3 is 110, 120, which isn't bad, but now our free T3, instead of being at 3 or 3.1, now it's at 2.9, 2.8, 2.7, and it's dropping because of that estrogen dominance.
Yep. So estrogen dominance, which we'll probably have to do a whole show on that if we haven't already. A lot of that's going to be exposure to synthetic estrogens.
Yeah, it's going to be exposure to plastics, chemicals, pesticides, fluoride in the water, and also just being stressed, right? Because in women, progesterone predominates that second half of the cycle. And when women are stressed, they can use progesterone as a building block to make more cortisol. So more stress will actually steal from their progesterone. It's kind of like a progesterone steal or a progesterone escape, where we're pulling progesterone in to make more stress hormones, because our body is epigenetically hardwired to deal with the stress of today versus the healing of tomorrow. The problem is most people live in a perpetual state of stress, so tomorrow never comes.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yes. So I did the political sidestep. You asked me a question and I gave you the answer that I wanted to give. It had nothing to do with that. So let me go back to your question. I'll reiterate it for the listeners here. What supplements in particular? So number one, we can add good quality hair support from fatty acids, right? Omega-3s, whether it's good quality fish oil or cod liver oil or sardines and things like that, salmon, mackerel. Those are all really good quality omega-3 fatty acids that can help with hair. Next, you have conventional things that have been around a while, like biotin, which is kind of like almost like a B vitamin, so to speak. And that can very much help with skin, help with hair as well. Next, I would say collagen is one of my favorite things. Collagen's amazing. It's very high in glycine and proline and hydroxyproline, helps provide building blocks for skin, hair, and nails. And I was talking to Dave Asprey last year when he was growing his hair out longer, and I noticed it just being longer and more full. And I'm like, Dave, what the hell are you doing with your hair? It looks great. He goes, I'm mega dosing collagen, like 40 grams a day, 50 grams a day. So since then, I've been really upping my collagen to really have good, high quality hair and skin building blocks. And that's, I think, one of the most important things you can do is good quality grass-fed collagen. And by the way, we have a collagen product coming out very soon called True Collagen, and I was able to source one of the biggest and best distributors for collagen that is grass-fed, hormone-free, pesticide-free. So stay tuned for my True Collagen, which is something that will be coming out very soon, and I'm already using it now, and I love it.
I want my sample pack in the mail.
You got it, man.
Okay.
Coming your way. So,
awesome.
So we talked about biotin, collagen, fish oils. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's good. You know, the fatty acids for sure. Basically, things that are going to help to reduce the inflammation in general. Because if there is something going on in the gut has to be healthy. So if you just are somebody listening and maybe you're already taking collagen, which a lot of women are, they're frustrated. They're almost like they're mad at me. It's like, Evan, I'm already taking collagen and my hair's still falling out or my hair's still very thin. It's like, well, that's the supplement. You know, let's see what else is going on deeper. And usually something pops back up on the stool test. And they're like, okay, well, you know, your digestion's been impaired. Here you are feeding these bacteria or feeding these parasites, not you. So maybe it's been good nutritional insurance to get the collagen. But if you have someone stealing your energy, you know, someone like kind of how they used to do, and they used to steal cable. You know, they'd go up to the main line and splice the cable wire down to your house. If that's going on in the gut with your nutrients, then you could still have issues regardless of you know what you're supplementing with.
Yeah, I remember Dr. George Goodhart saying in various seminars, you know, years back, the highest good is to get to the root cause. The highest good, and that's always in my head. Like, all right, are we getting to the root cause, right? And a lot of times, supplements may be getting to the root cause, or they may be palliative and supportive with the fact that we are addressing the root cause, but also adding these extra nutrients in. So i.e., let's say we have a gut issue and our diet stinks, but we're adding in a whole bunch of collagen. Well, is that a bad thing? No, it's not a drug. It's not going to have side effects and kill over 100,000 people a year like pharmaceutical drugs do in general, taken the right way. So that's a good thing. We don't have that nasty side effects. Is it providing more building blocks that would be there anyway? Yes, but we want to make sure the underlying cause is addressed. So I'm a big fan of, if we're going to add something in that's supportive and palliative, at least make sure the underlying cause is addressed, or there's a program set up in place to address it.
Right. So there's nothing wrong with treating the symptoms, and sometimes we have to treat the symptoms first to keep people motivated, move the needle enough with them to keep them on their program, but eventually we're always kind of backtracking from the symptom back to the underlying cause.
100%. And like, there's another element here I didn't talk about, which was DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone. So if we look at kind of the breakdown or the formation of testosterone, it goes from DHEA to testosterone, or I should say androstenedione, then to testosterone, and then to DHT. So in each downward cycle, the hormonal molecule gets more potent, more strong. So DHEA is weaker than andro is weaker than testosterone's weaker than DHT. So essentially, said in a different way, DHT is the strongest and most powerful out of all of them. And DHT is shown to potentially starve out blood flow to some of the hair follicles. So that's important. So if we run a profile, we can look at women with elevations, like PCOS can drive elevations in androgens, and we can use things like GLA fatty acids like evening primrose oil or black currant seed oil to help with reducing that DHT. It's a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. In men, we can also use, I think women too, this would work, but we can do zinc and selenium, which happen to be great for the thyroid. Go figure. And in men, we'll do it a lot. We'll use saw palmetto and or pumpkin seed extract as a natural 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. And, a lot of the medications, right, like the names are fleeting me. I can think of all the commercials from the 90s, the Rogaine and a lot of those types. I forget the actual trade name of it. Propecia. That's what it is. Those are typically 5-alpha reductase inhibitors as well at a pharmaceutical level, but we can do it naturally too. They won't have all the side effects. So my big 5-alpha reductase inhibitors for females, a really easy one is going to be the nutrients, selenium and zinc, and then why not add in the GLA fatty acids like the evening primrose or the black currant. Men can do that as well, and they can also go the extra mile and add in some pumpkin seed or saw palmetto along with that.
Beautiful. Awesome. I'm glad you got there, because I've had that in my radar, the DHT, and I was thinking about, men that have used steroids and they have that increased conversion of hormones there, so they're more likely to go bald, and I'm glad that you're able to pull that out and digest it for us.
Absolutely. So if we kind of break everything down, we talked about the supplements. Those are great. Really, really important things. We talked about the hormones. We talked about how the adrenals affect it, right? Cortisol high or cortisol low will affect the thyroid. So if the thyroid's affected by the adrenals, that's going to cause the problem. If the thyroid's affected by autoimmunity, right, we're attacking the thyroid gland because of gluten, that can reduce thyroid hormone. That can cause a problem. Too much iodine with the thyroid issue can drive hair loss. I've seen people do excessive iodine with an autoimmune mechanism in the background, massive hair loss. Wow. Massive. So we have the thyroid piece. We have the nutrients that can exacerbate autoimmunity. Gluten, potentially iodine if there's already an autoimmune mechanism and process. The leaky gut. Poor nutrients in the diet regarding fats and proteins. Not digesting these things, these compounds well. Infections can drive a lot of these things. I've heard Yuri talk about it with the gut and the infections causing his alopecia areata. So all of these different mechanisms. We have individual things that affect the thyroid. We have individual things that affect the adrenals and thyroid together. We have nutrients that play a factor. And then we have different hormonal things like the DHT and the progesterone as well.
Great summary there.
Anything else you want to break down there?
Honestly, I think that was great. I think it would just be me doing a broken record pitch there. So I think you did great. The takeaway from this is kind of a complex situation. So it may sound just easy on the surface. You go to Walgreens, you see a hair supplement, I'm going to try it, my hair's going to grow back. Maybe not. So if you do have this issue, it would be important to reach out to Justin or myself. Let us look for you and see what's there. At least rule things in and rule things out. And if you run a test and Justin says, oh, look, you're free and clear, then well, that's good, but we still need to try to figure out what's going on. But you never know if you don't test. If you haven't tested, you've guessed. So keep that in mind. anytime you're going to go invest your money into a supplement, you may need to invest into the clinical data that's really going to find out why this is causing it before you can actually work on fixing it.
Absolutely. So let's kind of back up here. All right. So I'm a male or female that's dealing with hair loss. Kind of what's the action tree here? All right.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Well, no, you go ahead. What you got?
Okay. So you're a man, right? Figure out, does hair loss fall in your family? Is this a male pattern baldness thing? Well, number one, we got to first realize that a lot of how we deal with stress and how we, eat, sleep, and drink typically is passed down through our family. So is this purely a genetic thing, or is this, hey, I'm just following the footsteps that my parents did, and therefore I'm going to have the same genetic predispositions because I'm eating crap and taking care of myself in a very poor way? So figure out how much of this is in your control and how much isn't. Either way, if it's totally male pattern baldness and you don't have any control, you still want to be doing all the things we mentioned anyway. So don't ever let that be your excuse, because you still get other benefits by doing all these things there, like brain health and performance and muscle and libido and virility and energy. So keep that in mind. If you're a woman, you have a lot of control over this as well. So the first thing we do is diet. Cut out the crappy foods. Grains are going to be the first thing. Get your sugars under control. Next, make sure you're digesting foods and proteins and fats well. If you're having digestive symptoms and things like HCl and enzymes aren't working, well, guess what? Get on those. Now, next, if that's not working, then we have to do some testing. We have to look at the adrenals. We have to look at the thyroid. We have to look at the gut. All right, so that's where you want to reach out to Evan or I and figure out the next steps. But in the meantime, you can go pick up a high-quality collagen. You can try some HCl and enzymes. You can try some of the nutrients we mentioned. But if that's not working, you've already exhausted the low-hanging fruit. So just make sure after that you reach out to a good functional medicine doc to get to the next step. But in the meantime, though, don't let the male pattern baldness, genetic stuff, if you're a man, stop you from taking action. You don't know how much of it can be slowed or how much can go back. And if you're a woman, this is a deeper sign that something underneath is happening. So I hope that helps and empowers everyone listening that's dealing with this problem.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. So it's the gun. You may have the gun there, and it could be loaded with your genetics and your family, just all of that, your susceptibility to stress, your environment, etc. But you have the ability to not pull that trigger, so don't just, oh, screw it, I'm just going to binge eat on pizza. That may not be the step that's best for you. Sometimes we get frustrated with our health conditions and we just say, screw it, I'm going all in, I'm going to go off the rails. But oftentimes, just pause, take a breath, and then think, okay, what can I actually do that's going to work me towards my goals, not just self-sabotage myself. And that is common for people to hit this point, and they do want to just, it's all over. They get this kind of, what do you call that? Like a black and white approach, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we want to make sure we have a multifaceted, systems-based approach, right? And we want to have objective testing to quantify it. And even things like temperature testing can be a really good objective kind of test that doesn't require any resources to do it outside of a really good fertility thermometer. So kind of grab those low-hanging fruits, test, right? We want to assess, not guess. So get the assessments to figure out what's going on. And if you guys got to reach out to someone like Evan or I to get more info, we are here at your disposal.
Well said.
All right, Evan. Hey, it's a great Friday, man. I'm looking forward to heading out on the water today on Lake Austin, probably tomorrow morning, do a little water skiing, get some good cardio in, or I should say it'd probably be more anaerobic with some of those movements that I'm doing. But anything else on your agenda for this weekend you want to share with our crowd?
Oh, we're just going to get out and enjoy the sun. We got 4 weeks left till the baby comes, so we're going to be soaking up the blue sky and the sunshine while it's here. And before you know it, we'll have a baby, and who knows, we may be trapped inside and changing diapers all day. So
I know, I hear you. Well, make sure you say hi to Hannah for me, and you have a great weekend.
I sure will. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.